Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're eager to continue the conversation, and I want to just say thank you again for being with us today. We have got a fantastic panel discussion lined up for this afternoon. I am thrilled to be joined on the stage by three folks who are going to share a little bit about, as national organizations and as national partners of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, how they're thinking about data, how they're thinking about using data visualization, and how they're approaching impact and improvement in their work, and how the campaign can really learn from and connect with other national networks. We had a great example of how communities are using that work locally, how they're taking advantage of resources from Strive Together, from the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. And this afternoon, I'm thrilled to be joined with three colleagues. I want to give you quick introductions of each, and then we're going to encourage them to join this conversation about impact and improvement. So first up to my immediate left is Michael McAfee. Michael is the president of PolicyLink. Michael has been a longtime partner of the campaign, was with us at the very first campaign convening, was in Denver back in 2012, and PolicyLink has done some incredible work. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the Equity Atlas. Kyle Zimmer, who is the president, founder, and CEO of First Book. So she's got all the titles. She's got all the titles. First Book, similarly, has been an incredible partner to the campaign, both at the national level, but I know so many of you in our communities across the country have tapped into the incredible resources and support that First Book is offering. And so Kyle's going to talk a little bit about their marketplace, how they're fueling innovation, and the resources that they have available. And then last but certainly not least, batting cleanup, is Mary Sellers, who is the U.S. president for United Way Worldwide, and we are thrilled to have Mary with us. Mary started with the campaign in Des Moines, Iowa, where she was the president and CEO of the United Way in Des Moines, and really started that effort there, has a huge commitment to literacy and to this work and engaging communities and the role that United Way can play in all of that. And Mary's going to share a little bit about how they're thinking about results, the global results framework from United Way, and some other ways they're using technology to really drive improvement and impact. So that's the preview for what I think is going to be a great panel. And I want to start with Kyle, actually. So Kyle's going to lead us off and share a little bit about what's going on at First Book. So Kyle, take it away.
Sure. It's great to be here with you, Michael and Mary. Thank you so much for including me. And Ron, I've always loved CGLR, you know that. It's a really powerful and inspirational group. And may I just say, the most hopeful thing that has happened in months and months to me happened outside in this very hallway when I saw that CGLR has allowed the women to take over the men's bathroom. I'm here to tell you the revolution has begun.
The revolution has begun, and we're proud to lead that revolution.
I was very impressed. I have had my picture. I did a selfie next to that sign. That is going viral.
Just remember, it started here in Philadelphia.
That's exactly right. Now, I also want my friends, my colleagues from First Book, Candace Radowski and Julie Williams, to raise your hands. These guys are rock stars, and it's great to work with them. Now, First Book, we've been at this for about 25 years, and we know a lot of you. There are some of you we still don't know, and we're desperate to get to know you. You should know right away that our mission is focused, of course, on literacy and reading, but it's really much broader than that as well. It's about educational equity. And I'm going to, I believe, use this, right?
Sure. Yep.
It only has 2 buttons on it, so my confidence level has gone way up. that, my co-founders and I really started by looking at big, broad systemic shifts. We knew that we did not want to start small, we wanted to start big. And we knew that that level of systemic change would require market-driven and technology-driven approaches. And our theory of change is really right here on this slide. You can see that what we've aimed at doing is unifying and aggregating a highly fragmented group of people who are serving kids in need 0 to 18 years of age. Now today, the First Book Network, and that's what this is about, is 390,000 strong, and we have about 1,000 new members joining every week. It's free to join. It takes about 5 minutes online. And I'm going to do a quick sort of speed dating session with you for those of you who don't know who we are, just to tell you what our basic programs are. And then I'm going to outline just three quick concepts that we're doing, we're building and refining right now that are deeply technology driven. And we want to invite everybody in to helping us to refine and build these new models. The first and our oldest model is called the First Book National Book Bank. It is the only central clearinghouse for donations of excess inventory across the US and Canada from publishers. This is about 23 years old. We work with over the top 90 imprints. The books are free. You pay only a shipping and handling fee of about 55 to 65 cents per book. This system moves between 9 and 12 million books annually. The First Book Marketplace is our second major program, and it is an e-commerce site. It's a nonprofit, of course, and it provides a wide range of curated, wonderful books and a wide range of other resources. The books on this site, I won't drag you through the business model, even though it's hard for me not to, but I won't. Are about $3 a piece, and they are highly diverse, and we really work hard on making sure that the quality is very high. But what brings the power to those two models is that technology-driven market aggregation. That's what brings fuel to it, and it has allowed us to become one of the largest specialty buyers in the United States and Canada for the publishing industry. Here are some headlines for what we have accomplished. Of course, I love these numbers, but I'll tell you, and it's probably an insight into my personality, and we can have a large group therapy session at a later point. But when I see that we serve 1 out of 4 classrooms and programs serving kids in need in North America, that's a great number until you realize that what it means is we're not serving 3 and 4, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what keeps us up at night and keeps us wanting to build bigger systems that are more inclusive, that have all of us holding hands with each other, because that is what it's going to take to move the needle across the board. So I'm going to jump now into these 3 quick snapshots of things that we are building and refining right now. The first one is called First Book Insights. You may, if you were here last year, you may remember this. We actually launched this a year ago with you guys. Yep. And the thing that we should remember as I go through these 3 is that these all grew very organically from each other. What started with us trying to get feedback and trying to talk with everybody in our network and trying to say, what do you need? What do you want? What can we do for you? What needs do we see across sectors, across geographies? That began to build into First Book Insights. You can see under this, thanks to the use of technology, we're now able to connect dots and tie together multiple sources of data. We've now begun to compile a bank of proprietary insights that aggregates and amplifies the voice of educators serving children in need. This is a profoundly powerful new tool. And as you can see on this slide, we use a full complement of tactics and technology platforms to support it: Salesforce, Pardot, Qualtrics, and many others. We use this internally, this data, to help us in a number of different ways. You can see, we use it to decide what inventory we buy. We use it to identify new kinds of products that are important, whether it's winter coats or it's new technologies. That is utterly driven by the field. We're like the big Labrador retriever. You tell us what you need, and we run out and do our best to get it for you. And finally, it also uncovers issues and concerns. So for example, it will surprise exactly no one in this room that we heard years ago that our teachers and educators were looking for high diversity in the content of books we were providing. And as a result of that, we launched something called Stories for All. And Stories for All has been a major initiative we have pushed through our own, by putting our money where our mouth is. We've been one of the major pushers for the development and expansion of diverse content in the publishing industry. But as we began to work on this, we also realized the power of what we were building and how we could use it to expedite and aggregate other topic areas. And so one of the things that began troubling us is that there's this gigantic delay in the field. Just to pick on Apple for a minute. iPhones, every 9 or 10 months, there's a cycle, where I pick big fights. Every 9 or 10 months, they complete the cycle between innovation for their engineers and the consumer in the market. And that's why all of us rush out to get our new model, the iPhone, right? But in our field, that cycle is not 9 or 10 months. That cycle's like 20 years, right? And so we can't, from the time the best thinkers, the best researchers formulate wonderful strategies to the time they make it out into the field for the kids we are all devoting our lives to, and then back up to the researchers to give them feedback, that's a 20-year spin. So what we realized is that has to be fixed, and it has to be fixed now, because otherwise we will lose a generation in between every evolution of that, and we've got to stop that. So we stepped into that, and we generated something called the accelerator. And the accelerator, these are the steps you can see up here. We identify what the critical issues are facing our educators. We then partner with leading outside experts on that issue. And in fact, the queen mother of the accelerator is here with us, Ellen Galinsky. Wave to your subjects, Ellen. Wave to your subjects. So Ellen was the first one who stepped out to work with us on this. We then work with, for example, Ellen's team. We've also used this with Castle, with the Search Institute, and with others. And we worked with them to package those research findings, those strategies, into bite-sized, tangible activity guides, tip sheets, videos in some cases. We then work with our internal curation team, and they work to really integrate the highest quality books into those tips and guides. And then we distribute through the entire 390,000 member network. And then afterwards, we go to the people who have downloaded those resources, and we say, did it work? Did it work? What didn't work? Where did it work? Where didn't it work? Did it work with older kids and not younger, urban kids and not rural? We want to know everything, and then we can feed that back up to the researchers. So the goal is to go from 20 years to 20 months, and we've got to do it fast. But we've now built the machine to do just that. Now, I'm going to skip, I know everyone will be disappointed with this, but I'm going to skip the next 2 slides. And you will just have to download these because as I'm a woman of mystery, and I just can't reveal everything to you in this one instance. I've got to keep something back. So the third concept that I want to share with you that we're really excited about is called Community Connect. And what we've done in this one is realize that we have the power to connect nonprofits and governmental agencies that have resources for kids in need, but have a tough time getting the word out and doing that efficiently and effectively. And so this slide presents a case study where, say you're at a clinic in Brooklyn and you've got free flu shots for kids. We actually have about 7,000 members in Brooklyn alone. We're able to work with our members. They can opt into this resource, and we almost immediately can let them know. What that means is that all the marketing delay, all the marketing expense, all that outreach expense can be short-cycled, can be downsized, money can be saved, time can be saved, and it's a wildly more efficient system. This is kind of a hyper-local example. At the national level, we've used this with a group, for example, it's an app called Food Finder. I love this app. You guys may know about it. It's an app that lets kids find places to get free food, whether it's a summer feeding site or a soup kitchen. And when we worked with them and we put it out to the network, their volume went up by 100% in about a 2-day period. And so it told us that there was some there and that there's some real power. Again, I'm skipping this mystery. Here we go. The one thing that I want you to hear me say today is that First Book is completely committed to the work of the people in this room. You guys are heroes. You're working your hearts out, but we are not making progress fast enough. I know that there's some great news and there's some great models, but the truth is that there are a lot of topic areas where the pace of the problems are outpacing our solutions. And so we're here to say, let us work with you. Please join us. Please sign up. Please get others to sign up so that we can begin to aggregate together and become the market force we should be, become the force in educational policy we should be, have the databases and platforms underneath it that you need to evaluate your work. We are stronger by far if we're working together. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. So Kyle, one quick question at the risk of pulling out some secrets from a woman of mystery here.
I know.
One quick question. If you were to fast forward in your mind's eye 10 years,
Yep.
What do you envision for First Book in terms of the power of this distribution channel for the work that we're all doing today? What gives you hope and inspiration?
Well, I think the thing that gives me hope is being in a room like this, to be honest with you. I really mean that heart and soul. The people I know here already, it's profoundly inspiring what you guys are doing. It's profoundly inspiring, and I hope that you take from this gathering that same kind of energy, because we need it, right? We all need it. And I think that when you start looking at where we are now, our 390,000, and you look at where we need to be, and let's say it's 1.5 million for starters, right? That is a group of people who, if we talk to each other, if we link arms and buy products together, that's a force, man. That is a force. And when I hear the questions about data sharing, and how do you get data out of school districts, and I will confess to you, I was flirting with throwing myself out the window during that part of the last session, not because the answers were wrong, they're right, but it is jarring to me that what we're dependent on is the development of personal relationships to get the use of data that's going to be transformative. You've got to be kidding me. Kids' lives are at stake. Your lives are at stake because you're spending your time on this, and we are supposed to be And our main mechanism is chatting up the people who are behind the data. And that's not an insult to the people who answered the question. They're right. That's right. But what I'm saying, that is the mechanism now. But we have got to fix that, and we've got to fix it now. And at 1.5 million linked arms all together, we change that kind of dynamic. We crack that open, and we have got to do it. We have got to do it.
Great. So I want to invite Michael to speak a little bit and sort of pick up on this theme of really disrupting current dynamics, and especially around equity and the work that you're doing at PolicyLink, real leadership on that. So Michael, share a little bit about how you're thinking about technology and in the context of this equity conversation.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. So PolicyLink is a research and action organization. We're based in Oakland, California. 70-person shop, and our job is to advance equity. And we define equity as just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. And if we're really doing our job to create a just and fair society, we're helping to frame the narratives that will attract people to want to do the tough work to make this nation just and fair. We're strengthening the equity network. We're helping to improve the capacity to accelerate results on the ground. And ultimately, we're achieving systems changes and policy wins, because that is the work, really, if we're going to get population-level impact, to achieve systems and policy wins. And so the National Equity Atlas is an example. I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to stay more to your question, because you can look at this yourself. The National Equity Atlas is a result of us trying to do our work and being frustrated that when we would walk in rooms and say, is your data disaggregated? People would kind of push away from the table and not want to talk about race. And so if the nation is changing and becoming a nation of color, and we're trying to solve problems, but we can't have the data, what are we talking about? So we went and created the National Equity Atlas. The National Equity Atlas evolved from our framework, our economic framework, that equity is the superior growth model, to begin to make the case that not only is it a moral imperative for the nation, but there is actually a substantial economic imperative. And so equity is the superior growth model was that economic framing. And then the National Equity Atlas became a practical way to say, if you move the needle on particular indicators, what would happen in your community? And so we wanted to use the National Equity Atlas not as another seductive tool to get people to look at data and be startled by it or intrigued by it or want to have conversations forever. We wanted it to catalyze action. So when you look at the National Equity Atlas, what you will begin to see is that it tries to help you begin to make some of that collective sense-making of this work by getting very practical. Deep rigor behind the data, but the way it's visually laid out is very simple. It will tell you what's going on with an indicator. It'll actually tell you what works to improve that indicator. It'll actually tell you how much of the GDP will improve by reducing racial disparity. So it's a really powerful tool for community folks, policymakers, electeds, et cetera. But there's been a couple things that I've discovered by using this tool to advance my work. The first is, it's not enough for intermediaries to put out data tools. They must internalize the tool and to develop an approach that will actually help people accelerate on the ground. So to me, the data tool becomes work avoidance if my own team can't use that tool to help people get results better and faster than they would on their own. So what that meant, when you heard Jeff talk about he had to slow down for a moment and figure out what he was going to do in his own shop, we had to do the same and decide, what is our approach to acceleration on the ground? Because there's a lot of things you can do as an intermediary and get away with that are really bad practice, like webinars incessantly, convenings incessantly, learning communities. That stuff has its place. But absent of it being grounded in a result, it's work avoidance. So we've got our own approach now and our leadership voice about how we want to join. But there's a couple things that I've learned in figuring that out internally. And when you ask questions, I can go deeper in that. But there's a couple things that I've learned in community that have been really sad, and it's been important for me to hold my voice in. The first is I find that people often want us to do equity profiles because we'll do a really deep dive in a particular place. Most recently, I did this in a place They were looking at the disparity data. They had listened to a lot of my speeches on the website, so they knew what they were getting. And they said, Michael, we want you to come and do the launch of the equity profile. The mayor is going to be there, the chamber. We're going to have over 1,000 people in the room. And by the way, don't talk about race. We talked about equity last year. Well, you're looking at disparity data that is telling you that black and brown folks are really, really doing bad. But you're seduced by the profile, and you're happy that you think that the end result is that the profile is done, and we're going to now announce another piece of paper being done. Mm-hmm. The work isn't producing another piece of paper, folks. The work is reducing that disparity. So that was the first thing. It actually ignited some good conflict because I was like, I'm not coming because I'm not going to perform for you. And it's important for us not to use data to perform. Community members already know it's bad. The problem is we're choosing to continue to ignore it. So when it comes to this, what I often find, and been in a couple of places where Long Island was the most recent, where after we reduced the profile, community members were actually crying. And they were crying because they're like, this is the first time a national shop has come into our community and validated what we've been trying to say. So they saw themselves in the data. Now, why do I tell you that? I tell you that because at this moment where we're talking about narrative change, the narrative is right here in this data. The narrative is in the stories in your community. The problem is we keep choosing to create another narrative, not listen to that narrative that is right in front of your face. Those community folks are telling you what they experience, and we'll go off and do something else. We'll outsource that function. So what am I learning? The first thing I'm learning is that you can't outsource leading on equity. You've got to struggle through the data. You got to figure out what it means. You've got to make sense for yourself, and you've got to figure out what you're willing to fight over. You've got to make those choices, folks. Consultants can get you so far, but you got to own that as leaders. Second, systems and policy change coupled with good programmatic strategy and families owning their own contribution is essential. We're at a place in our evolution now where we can hold all that complexity. You can't just ask parents to do something. You can't just have really good programmatic practice and have systems that are kicking the teeth out of family members every day. Or policies that are quite oppressive. You've got to want to take all of that on if you're going to talk about population level impact. And it's really important for us to decide if that's the work that we want to do because quite frankly, folks, I believe that's all that's left for us to do. So for me, what does that mean for PolicyLink? When I think about this data and implementation science, it means that first we've got to own our number. I've been saying that for a long time to folks locally, but our number now is the 100 million living at 200% of poverty. So if that is my number, you can see why I could have an aversion to webinars and conferences and all that, because it actually won't change public policy for anybody. It doesn't mean that people won't learn, and it doesn't mean it won't be good stuff. But if I'm going to help to transform the nation so that it is more just and fair for everyone, something else has to happen. And so the last thing I'll say about this is this: as you think about this work and being more sophisticated in how we bring greater discipline to our work and how we create better infrastructure, if you look at folks that many of us in this room are really angry at right now, in the right, they build profound infrastructure. Most recently, I was telling someone, I said, you're mad at what Cambridge Analytica purportedly did. But I look at that infrastructure and I say, if you take the top 5 or 6 policy shops, including PolicyLink, no one's funding us to do that. We don't have that collectively. Think about that for a moment, folks. Using technology to change opinion in an election cycle, while the rest of us are still in this 20-year innovation cycle. That's winning. Having that capability to build it and then execute on it. We'll cry about it, but won't build it. They own their populations. We're still afraid to say black and brown and poor white folks. I don't know how you're going to transform the nation if you can't even say the folks who you say you're privileged to be in service of. They own their people too. They radically focus on systemically creating institutions that are hurtful and oppressive and policies that ensure that they can maintain their power. And we run pilots and programs for 50 and 60 damn years. And I'm sharing that to say pilots and programs and all that stuff is new. It's needed. But at PolicyLink, I don't believe we need to write another report unless it's extending the knowledge base, it's accelerating the practice, or it's creating the frame that actually people are going to hold on and take action. Otherwise, it's useless. This question of what matters in terms of moving the needle on an indicator is the work for our generation, and to do that at a scale that is transformative. So for me, when I look at this data, I look at it, but I get concerned because I think that people think that this is the work. The rigor here that's manifested in all the stuff here, this is what we should be doing at this level. This is what we're paid to do. So I'm not impressed by it until you tell me what you're going to do with it. Now, I'm talking about my own shop, not anyone else. Don't write another document until you can ask yourself, how will you organize differently to have greater impact? What will you let go of? For me, the biggest implications of all this work is that in many cases, our ecosystems have to be radically re-engineered. We're not designed, we're not organized to get the results that we want. We think we can do all this work and keep funding 10,000 nonprofits in a place. That's the wrong question. The question is, how do you need to organize? What infrastructure do you need to get the results that you want? That's the challenge, folks. And we're maintaining things that, quite frankly, do not serve where we need to go. So for me, this journey has been about, will I keep my leadership voice? Will I situate the right work? Will I have an obsession with situating results at the center and indicators as the locus of where I will align contribution? And then lastly, will I hold a culture of accountability for delivering? That's what I'm learning when I'm looking at all this internally and when I'm in communities that are producing it. And the aversion right now is that we walk right up to the line and then we say, well, you know, we are not ready. You may not be ready, but community folks are ready for us to do our damn jobs. That is the moment. It's no longer about whether I'm comfortable with the word equity, whether I'm comfortable saying race or not. That's not it. If you're uncomfortable, you can find a lot of other places to work. I said this to my staff on Monday, and I can't believe the folks who act to be the most progressive in the world got the angriest, because I said to them, the only thing I care about right now is, are we making transformative progress in helping the 100 million? And if you don't want to do that, if you don't believe in doing that, if you don't believe in our transition and in our leadership, I would like for us to have a conversation about how we help you lovingly exit PolicyLink. Because we can do that lovingly right now and not be in conflict. I'm trying to practice anger management. And folks were really upset. But what I was really signaling is that this is the moment, folks, where if you're not all in, you're going to have a problem with me. And you're going to have a problem with the institution. And so it's no longer cool to be in Oakland and think that you're going to earn your progressive way of being simply by showing up and wearing a t-shirt or going to a rally. You've got to pay the price. And that's what the nation needs from all of us now, folks. And many of you, I know you're doing it. I've been seeing the successes that you're making. But what I can tell you is I'm going too many places right now where folks are still afraid to do the work. And that's what the nation requires of us right now, to create a more just and fair society.
Thank you. Michael, just a follow-up on that. Could you share a little bit about a place you've been recently where you're starting to see those systems and some of that infrastructure emerge? I mean, are there places where you, at least places you could point to that are starting to actually make that change happen and help people through their fear and confront that directly?
Actually, I'm seeing it all over the country. I'm seeing it in the work that you all are doing in your communities. To me, we're at a critical point because I see that people are no longer debating whether this is the work, they're wading into it. So even in the Promised Neighborhoods Network, I'll talk about that because I know Strive Network is doing phenomenal work, and we've worked closely together. But in Minneapolis, Indianola, Mississippi, Berea, Kentucky, Chula Vista, California, those are places where I know the Promised Neighborhood sites are doing amazing work. Now the question, which you really hear me saying, is to go to transformational work beyond a programmatic strategy like Promised Neighborhoods to institutional transformation. How do you get the school district in a particular place to absolutely be making progress on indicators, but also have restorative justice practices so you're not kicking the kids out of school? It's those systems and policy works where you can't have it both ways, right?
Yep.
And so what I'm frustrated by is that we keep telling nonprofits to do all this tough work and putting all this on their backs, but we don't ask our institutions to change. And so what you see me saying now is I want to bring it all together. So I see the nonprofits we've been the one holding democracy down. You know, and now what you see is our other institutions are the ones who are crumbling and haven't been wanting to step up. So my point is, we are the beacons of a path forward for creating a just and fair society. Our job is to stop being afraid to more broadly assert our leadership voice to get other folks to join us in this work, and to stop fetishizing business, quite frankly. Business doesn't have the answers, just like we don't have all the darn answers. And so, to me, while we're doing the great work, people often overlook it because it's not business oriented. And that's the danger, folks. We can all learn from each other's sector. But quite frankly, business is creating a lot of problems that we're cleaning up. And so we need to get all of our sectors to be more accountable and responsive, and we need to be willing to learn across sectors. So I'm seeing this sector hold it down. Actually, if you think about when we came into this work 7 or 8 years ago, tremendous progress being made. And now you see it being laid over with discipline, greater focus on people developing the capacity to actually implement with greater rigor. That's not the problem. It is the problem of folks wanting to pay for this. It is the problem of folks wanting to actually understand what does the system and policy work require, and then to hold the line on that for the next 20 years to make it happen.
Yep. Thank you. Great. So Mary, we're talking a little bit about cross-sector partnerships and transformation in leadership, and certainly that's something you're bringing to United Way Worldwide, and thrilled that more than 50 United Ways are with us. We've got a really strong contingent of United Ways here. And let me turn to you and ask you to share a little bit about what you're thinking and how technology is playing a role in the work around impact and improvement in the United Way system.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Ron. It's really a pleasure, honor to be on this panel with Kyle and Michael. And it's great to be here with my United Way colleagues and our partners who are so committed to this important issue of grade level reading. So thank you for the invitation to be here today. I wanted to set some context because the theme I'm hearing in this is transformational change and locking arms and moving forward together to make that change. And I just want to give some context for United Way Worldwide and United Way as a network, because we are in the midst of a transformational change as an entity. For those of you, I hope you're all aware of United Way, but I'm not going to make that assumption. I think in this room you are, but let me just share some context about United Way. We are the world's largest privately funded nonprofit. We raise about $5 billion annually. We have roughly 8 million donors, and we're in 41 countries and territories around the world. And within those countries and territories, we have roughly 1,400 local United Ways serving communities. 1,100 of those 1,400 are right here in the U.S. So that is big picture context for United Way as an entity. And so I'll start where I would think anyone in this room would start, and that would be with mission of United Way. And the mission for United Way is to improve lives by igniting the caring power of communities around the world. And that has remained constant for the several decades that we've been serving communities through the course of our 130 years in existence. But what has changed, and what's been mentioned as changed, is the environment in which we're operating in. And there are 4 key factors that are affecting that environment. One is globalization. People, companies, governments are increasingly interacting and engaging across borders. And so globalization is a big impact on the environment that we're working within. Another is migration, and that's been said a few times in sessions today. In our country, people are moving from rural communities to urban environments, primarily for economic opportunity, and international migration. In some cases, it's due to crisis, but mostly it's due to economic opportunity. So migration is also impacting the environment that we're working in. Next is demographics, and we work very closely. We have robust relationships with corporate partners. Their workforce demographics are changing, as I know we all know. The boomers are leaving the workforce. Millennials make up the largest portion of the workforce. And also, our communities' demographics are changing, more racially and ethnically diverse, and that's only going to increase as we move forward. And probably the biggest disruptor in our environment right now is technology, and that's what's been stated already. But technology is disrupting literally every field, every industry. So I just wanted to set that context for you in the way that we as United Way are looking at this in terms of our mission hasn't changed. The environment we're trying to make impact in is changing dramatically and will continue to. So some of the ways that we're responding is trying to be very clear and consistent in who we are and what role we play in the community. I know through a few sessions I've heard some feedback that folks had context of United Way within their own community and didn't realize there was this broader network. Some may not realize that it's also a federated model. So each of those 1,400 are independent 501c3s. They're just licensed to use United Way. So it's not as though someone called us the mothership. We are anything but the mothership because they're their own independent 501c3s. So that calls for a different way to work together to try to make this impact at scale, this change. So we also have to improve the way we communicate value and results. Frankly, amongst friends here in this room, United Way has been somewhat of a default choice for people to give to since payroll deduction was introduced back in 1964. With technology and direct giving and the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter and all of these, people are organizing organically. They're less reliant on institutions to get the data that they want to know what the causes are that they care about and get engaged with. That's disrupting the work that we're trying to do in communities. And the last two things we have to do is one of the greatest assets of United Way is that we're hyperlocal. There are several other nonprofits that have regionalized. United Way remains hyperlocal. They've got the infrastructure in community with our nonprofit partners. They are able to have the cross-sector collaboration within communities, and there's a convening ability that United Way has. So the hyperlocal presence of United Way is critical. But where we're seeing that we need to leverage ourselves more is being that $5 billion network, looking beyond geography. All those local United Ways were licensed based on geography, and geography doesn't matter anymore with the globalization, people moving in and out, et cetera. So our biggest thing that we have to work on as an entity to best serve our communities is working on reaching across geography to other local United Ways and to the entire network to have this transformational impact we want to have on communities. So I want to talk about three things we're doing, and this is more internal. So it's kind of an inside baseball look at United Way. But technology and data that we're using to drive impact, but then also measure results. And historically, we have done that one United Way at a time, and now we're trying to do it as a network. So that is a big shift. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is PerformanceLink, and this is an internal tool that we're using. It's a data visualization tool for local United Ways. Then I'm going to touch on our global results framework, which is a way that we measure impact one United Way at a time, but also, again, across geography. And last, we just announced a partnership actually several months ago now, but general availability hit on June 29th. We're in a formal partnership with Salesforce. We're the third company or organization that has ever had a formal partner with Salesforce. And we really do think this is going to be transformational in terms of philanthropy and community engagement. So I'll touch a little bit on those three efforts that we have going. PerformanceLink, like I said, local United Ways provide a lot of data to United Way worldwide, and we were back in the 20th century in terms of how we brought that back out to the field. There wasn't a meaningful way that people, to the points made in sessions today, could analyze that data and use it to propel forward. This is a data visualization tool that gives local United Ways a way to evaluate their progress and their performance, and they can do it relative to other local United Ways and they can see how they're moving the needle in their community. They can look at another United Way and say, hey, they're doing this similar, Michael's talking points were resonating with me, because they can look at another United Way and say, they're making progress on X, and they can dig into that data of the other United Way and say, oh, maybe I could make better progress there. So it's a great tool. We just introduced it last year, but it's been really well received by the field. The outcomes we want from this is for us to have objective data on how we're performing in local communities and best serve our communities. So that is the purpose of this internal tool. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Global Results Framework, but again, I don't want to assume everyone understands the work of United Way, so I just want to touch upon that. So United Way, what we do is we mobilize resources, and those resources can be funds, they can be volunteers, they can be advocacy efforts, all of those things, community engagement. Those are all resources that United Way mobilizes. We do that, and then we invest those, whether they're in direct services or programs, systems changes. All of those are things that we would invest our resources in. And again, it goes back to our mission, which is to improve lives. So that's a big picture view of what United Way does in community. So we created this Global Results Framework. So imagine 1,400 local United Ways around the globe, from China to Latin America to here in the US and Canada, and trying to gain a collective understanding of what it is we should be focused on in all those regions and all those local United Ways. We did. It's taken some time for us to do that. But what our focus is globally is on childhood success, youth success, economic mobility, and access to health. And we've agreed on indicators below that each local United Way will report on what they're doing in their community to this Global Results Framework. We launched this last year with 143 local United Ways uploading data into this framework. This year we have 250 reporting up, and our goal is to get more and more, ideally all local United Ways reporting. But we're really thrilled with the progress to date. Before I show you the tool, I just want to also emphasize the Global Results Framework is for the world, and we here in the US have our own goals, which are on the slide there, and I'm sure you can download if you want to delve a little deeper. And we also have Matt Aliberti from United Way Worldwide, and we also have Iola Fortune here, so if you have questions about that, we're happy to take those. But this is a snapshot at what this Global Results Framework looks like. Again, childhood success in the US versus Latin America versus China looks different, but there are similar metrics that we're trying to measure. So under childhood success, you can see the amount of money that's being invested in that. That's through the 143 that reported last year. Next to that, you can see how many kids within the programs that we're working with you and other partners on to provide are in high quality early education programs. Next to that, you can see how many of those kids are at grade level reading, et cetera. So you can drill down into this tool, but it's a great way for a local United Way to report out results. And also, we could do it at a country level, or we could do it at a global level. The other piece of this that has been really great for us is that our corporate partners, who sometimes have difficulty explaining to their employees who United Way is, because we're what we are, hyper-local, and we're responsive to and reflective of our own communities, but they sometimes have trouble translating what their impact is. And historically, they'd have to go to each local United Way. Now they can use the Global Results Framework to go across geography, across communities, and see what the impact is that their investment is getting them from the work of United Way in our partners. So this has been really well received in the short time it's been in place. So Salesforce Philanthropy Cloud, again, a formal partnership between United Way and Salesforce. This is a technology tool that will drive our mission to improve lives by meaningfully engaging individuals. What we're learning from research about individuals that want to get engaged in philanthropy and want to get engaged with their community is they want to see individual impact. They appreciate community level impact and community level reporting, but many of you have seen this where people want to see where did I make the impact? And that's a challenging place for United Way to be when we're so broad in what we do. So that's why we're partnering with Salesforce Philanthropy Cloud, to give that individual impact to that person that wants to engage in community and engage in philanthropy. So how do we do that? We do that through content, service, and a shared platform. What is content? So all the good work that we've been discussing today that's going on in community, but goes across for United Way, education, income, and health, all of that impact that goes on in community, 3D impact gets translated to 2D impact. So if one of the community level goals is high school graduation, all of the efforts, the programs, the services, the initiatives, the policy that goes along that continuum to get to high school graduation gets broken down into bite-sized pieces. So if I have an affinity for third grade reading, I can find myself in there and not the huge 95% graduation rates. So it's 3D impact that you're doing on the ground, getting translated into 2D content, going into this technology tool, so it's very easy for an individual to connect with their passion that aligns with our work. And the other difference is, historically, you've known United Way as an annual campaign, and I refer to it as Santa Claus. We show up once a year and we engage. This is much different. It's 365 and 24/7. So it's people who need help getting near real-time help. It's people that want to help, being able to have a seamless interaction and being able to help 365 days a year and ideally through the course of their lifetime. So a very transformational shift in the way that we have historically done this work, and it's very exciting. The service piece is really related to our corporate partners and how we shift from being a part of their philanthropy to really being the philanthropic partner of choice for companies to help them with their CSR goals and help them get their employees engaged in the community. And the shared platform is the technology tool itself, along with United Way really becoming that one network. We have been historically operating vertically, and I think what we're hearing today is we've increasingly got to work horizontally in order for us to engage and make the impact we want to see. So very high level, 3 ways that we're not only internally holding ourselves accountable and measuring our results and trying to drive impact forward, and also how we plan to engage community and individuals in our work moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary. I think you can begin to see and understand why we derive so much inspiration from these 3 partners as we've been trying to build this impact and improvement system for the campaign. And we have a few minutes. I'd love to open it up for some questions. I know that there are folks out there who have questions for our panelists. So who would like to start us off? A question up here?
Yes, hi. I have a question for Michael. I am from Puerto Rico, and we are usually almost never on the map of data like the one that you presented. So I wanted to know what would it take for us to be on the equity map?
What would it take for Puerto Rico to be on the equity map?
It simply takes us to talk and figure out what data is not there to start building it. This has actually been the value add of this. I mean, most recently with the Asian populations, because folks often don't go really deep and really getting into the subpopulations. We've been just building on our own data sets and also working with places like Zillow and other places around real estate data for other things that have been unconventional in the sector. So I can give you my card and we can then figure out how to do it.
That's great. Carrie.
I was just going to say I'd like to be on the map too for Hawaii.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Speak now. All right, well, join me again in thanking our wonderful panelists. So we are going to take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 10 till 3, okay?